David Badin, Philadelphia Bulletin and Israel Resource News Agency. Two questions of fiscal responsibility. One, the GAO, the General Accounting Office, has issued a number of reports about how much assets the PLO has, however they have been classified. Will you, in your position, ask for a declassification of the GAO reports so we know how much money the PLO has? The second issue is the United States has just allocated, again, 30% of UNRWA's budget. However, UNRWA is promoting the right of return, and if you haven't seen the Palestinian Authority map, which promotes the right of return and without Israel being mentioned, claiming all of Israel, not just claiming the West Bank and Gaza. The question is the United States encouraging this kind of policy? Also, there are tourist maps of the Palestinian Authority. There's no mention of Israel.
Well, let me, obviously, no. The answer is profoundly no. Not only are we not encouraging it, it's a non-starter in any kind of discussion. And it's the first time, I've heard of these, but I haven't seen them, but I've heard of them. I understand. It has no place on my wall, so don't worry if you want to give it to me. And I must say, I breathe a sigh of relief, because when you mentioned fiscal responsibility, I thought you were going to ask us about us. The short answer is Israel is a Jewish state today, and in every negotiation that we ever entered into, a non-negotiable bottom line, from my point of view, and I think from the administration and anybody else's, is that Israel will be a Jewish state. We consistently say that in any public statement. That is our position, and it is not negotiable, and I've said that many times. Now, there are ways to deal with that issue, as we saw in the course of the Clinton parameters, in the course of Taba negotiations, and so forth. It's up to the leaders of your country, of Israel, and the Palestinian leaders to resolve that in whatever final status talks take place when they take place. I'm confident it can be resolved, and I am confident that Israel, in whatever agreement ever has a chance of reaching a final agreement, will be a Jewish state. So I wouldn't pay much attention to propaganda maps or to whatever fringe groups put out their disinformation, et cetera. Remember, no, I do not believe that is the position of President Abbas. That was not expressed to me in the conversations that I had with him. I don't want to pre-jump any talks that might or might not take place. But I will tell you with confidence that I believe there is room to resolve that question on both sides in a way that is satisfactory to both sides. And I think that's all I ought to say about that at this point. Somebody back here had a question. Yeah.
You said vigorous sanctions and binding sanctions. The Secretary of State Clinton said what is needed now is crippling sanctions. All these are very strong words, but the question is, what is being done on the ground? Is there anything being done on the ground? And the question going from there is, should there a wide coalition not materialize? Will the United States be able to carry on this job by itself?
Well, let me. I'm not sure what you mean by on the ground. On the ground, where?
I'm talking about sanctions.
Generally, what are we doing working there? All right. I can tell you with assurance that we're not going to be alone. I can't tell you how many people will join in, but I tell you we will not be alone. Secondly, it is my belief that major allies, and most likely the United Nations itself, though not guaranteed, but most likely, are going to take a strong position on this. Now, even if they don't, the United States and a number of very powerful allies have the prerogative of moving on our own. And I will tell you that the United States Congress, and I believe this administration, are absolutely determined to take the best route available if Iran leaves us no alternative. I want to emphasize that. This is up to Iran. Iran is a great civilization, not represented, in my judgment, by this current regime. It's a civilization with a long history of great contributions to the rest of the world. And I think the people of Iran would like to have something different. But this is not an American struggle, that's an Iranian struggle. We are focused on their breach of their non-proliferation obligations, and we are focused on their failure to conform to the IAEA requirements with respect to their enrichment procedures. And that is the focus of the sanctions. Nothing more. It's not to do with politics of their country. It's not to do with their election. It is focused on their violations of the NPT and their refusal to comply and their movement towards the development of nuclear capacity. We will stay focused on that with a laser beam, and I believe we are talking about sanctions that, whether you use the word biting, crippling, whichever, they're going to have an impact.
Can I have a follow-up question?
Sure.
You see, many years ago, there was this formula of the speaking softly and carrying a big stick, this sort of policy. As of now, all the world sees, and this is the criticism that we hear, is that speaking softly, there is no other part to that.
I just don't agree with that. I think that's just fundamentally wrong. That's a complete misinterpretation of where we are and of what's going on. I think we learned in the Iraq war, when President Bush had the option of continuing sanctions, of continuing the inspections for a couple of months, and then potentially bringing France, Germany, Europe, other countries to the table, that a great opportunity was missed, but for a few months of patience. I think President Obama absolutely did the right thing when he came to office. Remember, he's only been in office a year. And he extended his hand, as he said many times, and he's been met by a fist. I think that reality has hardened the opinion of a lot of other countries, which is why Russia is now at the table talking, as well as other countries, about the reality of sanctions. And it's because we have exhausted the possibilities of diplomatic resolution that we have greater legitimacy in taking the steps and a more broad coalition of participants that we're in the position that we are. I think we're stronger for that. And frankly, I think Israel is more secure and others are more secure if we have more people at the table willing to engage in whatever activity it is that we need to take in order to hold them accountable to their own promises, I might add. Yes, sir.
Yes, this is a member from CNN. Recently, the Israeli Prime Minister designated two holy sites, the Cave of the Patriarch and Rachel's Tomb, as Israeli heritage sites. That has sparked reaction on the Palestinian side. Do you think that has a serious impact on the peace process?
Well, let me say this, that those sites are sites which for years and years and years have been understood by both Jews and Muslims and others, I might add, other religions, as important sites to their understanding of history and culture and religion. Indeed, they're shared in many respects. Access is shared and used by other parties also. I think what Prime Minister did is understandable in the context of his desire to preserve and renew their components, the components of it for which they are responsible. But I think we have communicated through a number of sources that the timing and the manner of the announcement, et cetera, needs to be taken into account in the future in the context of trying to move people to a dialogue. I think that it certainly lent itself to the potential of misinterpretation without adequate explanation, for which I think there is an explanation. And I think you have to be very, very careful of those things. And my caution to everybody would be, as we go forward, this is for us as well as anybody else, we have to be thoughtful and careful about whatever it is we say and do so that we try to keep a legitimate dialogue on track if we get that dialogue going. My hope, again, is based on the conversations that I had. I think it creates a rough moment. I think it's a hiccup. But I think we can hopefully get over it and proceed to the much more important place of discussing real security and real rights as they pertain to the parties.